Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse. It's June 24th, 2026. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, for those of you who are new to Office Hours, this is where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. Now, real quick, before I get started, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse maintains uh, a popular open source tool called Atmos, which is how organizations can automate all of their Terraform deployments as well as other things that you do as developers, like workflows and CI/CD and so forth. So if you haven't heard about it, check it out. Go to atmos.tools. Now, a quick note on how to get the most out of today's session. The format's informal. You can engage as much as you'd like and ask questions. And if you're curious about any of our open source tools or modules, this is a great place to ask. If you're tuning in from YouTube, you can join these calls live. Just go to cloudposse.com/office hours to register. You'll enter in your email and get an invitation to our weekly session. So if you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. You can find this recording posted in a few hours at youtube.com/cloudposse. All right, let's see what caught my attention. First is, yeah, this was something I think that got left over from last week. Something slightly wrong with how we select the topics, but still worth bringing up again. I think this was something you shared, Paul, right? A great way to annotate your uploads with additional context, for example, of how that artifact was created. Did you get to play with this anymore since last week?
Not yet. I have a long list of things I want to try.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's feeling these days. Like just the amount of product announcements from every single product and the number of products getting created every single week. It's hard to stay on top of it. And we are guilty of that as well. All right, let's see. Next up was oh yeah, runs on. So, by the way, nice job on the redesign. I dig the new site. So we are big proponents of runs on. Runs on is a really easy way to self-host your GitHub Action runners and offset the costs of running GitHub Actions. Plus, they're a lot more performant. So runs on has a lot of optimizations over just standard GitHub runners. For example, if you're using Action Runner controller to self-host. One of the things that they do is something called the Magic Cache, and they intercept requests for the cache API and automatically send those to an S3 bucket. And that keeps all your traffic within your AWS perimeter, as well as you can leverage your S3 endpoints and get more secure and faster performance. So that's pretty cool. Well, now they've added a native pull-through cache because that's the next thing that everybody encounters when you start, doing a lot of GitHub Action runs, and if you're pulling anything that goes from the Docker registry, you're going to hit rate limits, and it's a pain in the butt to configure that. So they have now enabled a automatic rewrite system somehow that lets all your requests go through the ECR pull-through cache, presumably also deployed as part of the CloudFormation template. So runs on, for those who aren't familiar, also it is basically a commercialized CloudFormation template um, uh, for a pretty nominal amount, an annual fee. And after you deploy it, it runs in your perimeter, in your estate. So I think there's some light telemetry that comes out of runs on's Lambdas or now ECS tasks to their system. But for the most part, everything runs in your estate. So it's a pretty easy sell from a compliance standpoint. So looking forward to enabling this. Has Juan, have you seen this announcement?
I have not, but I'd definitely look into it.
Yeah, I think we need to still update our component for runs on. It's running the earlier version before they updated to ECS. All right,
I did just
next.
add the Altel stuff for runs on. That's pretty cool.
Oh, you did? You set that up?
Yeah, it's the latest V2 version, but yeah,
Yeah, where are you sending it to?
a honeycomb.
Nico.
Yeah.
Cool. And next up was, yeah, I feel like I mean, we definitely brought this up last year when Bitnami announced that they were discontinuing the community registry. Um, I believe that's come and gone, and this is more or less old news, but it's pretty apropos because of something else I saw, and I have an announcement for that. Let's see if I can just skip ahead here. Uh, so that was, what was that? Ah, we'll get to it when we get to it. There's a new service that is building vetted open source Docker images with at this time no pull through no pull limits. So we'll talk about that. This was a popular announcement that came up last week. Might as well bring it up again. We've talked a lot about Aqua as a package manager. It's pretty nice. We are big proponents of Aqua. This is a similar product. I think the main claim to fame with Mize as opposed to Aqua is Mize is more about leveraging whatever package manager is native to your system to install that particular tool. It started off as an ASDF kind of alternative or reimplementation, but it's gone far beyond that at this point. As like task management and so forth. Obviously, Atmos is a third alternative that we would propose running. Atmos has native what we call toolchain management, and it does everything you see here, including having really powerful workflow capabilities, and coming soon, parallelization and containers, so you can have containerized steps in our workflows. But more on that later. I'll talk about some cool Atmos announcements coming out in the next release. So check out Mize. And this was also a holdover from last week's conversation, a hardened OS for running Kubernetes, but also I believe they ship containers that you can use as a K3s alternative. I didn't check it out yet, but it is the fact that they offer a K3s alternative image is interesting to me because we are coming out with emulators in Atmos. And one of those emulators we support out of the box is K3s. So maybe we'll support Talos if it makes sense. There's been a lot of interest these days in creating alternative Git repositories for different use cases. Every platform out there that's offering managed Git is struggling under the load of agentic development. But the other one is are interesting around gaming. And I remember because there was a person on a Cloud Posse team for a long time who was a amateur game developer. And he turned me on to some of the interesting or unique challenges when you develop games and using version control. And one of the reasons why LFS exists, large file system support in Git, because you get these massive assets and artifacts that you've got to commit, but that's not what Git is for. Well, Epic Games has come out with a Git compatible service that is designed specifically for large Git repositories, such as used in game development. Also, probably, we've talked about how, and I forgot to share that link. So yeah, so Cloudflare came out with their hosted Git option, also aimed towards agentic development. And then I've learned about Cursor Origin, which is it's in a private beta right now. You got to apply to get access to it, but it is also a new Git hosted service. So GitHub, everyone's gunning for you. There's a lot of interest in alternative forges for Git with different that are optimized for these different use cases. Does anyone know more about what Cursor is going for with Origin? I should look up the announcement on that one. What I'm curious about especially is if it maintains context with the commits. But that doesn't jump out as the primary feature, at least. All right. Too many sidebar things. All right. Any more thoughts on alternative Git forges? Anything you're using or trying out? All right. This is a nice one. So a lot of the supply chain attacks uh, related to projects hosted on GitHub have in some way, shape, or form been related to pull request misuse of pull request targets. And one of the issues with pull request target is that it runs in the context of your main branch or your default branch, and your default branch is considered a protected context, so vetted code only. But if you use pull request target and you check out untrusted code, now you're in a pickle because you're running untrusted code in a trusted context. So they've made a few things to make this harder to reduce the foot gun. And one of those is the behavior of actions checkout, and that it will automatically, was it not include the repository credentials, I believe, when it's called from a fork. Um, and there was one other optimization around, what was it? ID. No, I forget. That must have been another enhancement. So yeah, definitely if you are using pull request target, I would audit your usage, make sure it's being used in a safe manner. This was interesting to me only because I've been using Git for a long time and I didn't realize all the different ways that files could be ignored. If you use git ignore, obviously, to ignore files in your file system, that's one way. But you can also set it globally within your Git config, which is nice because there can be a lot of artifacts, or like if you're using Claude plugins and installing those and you don't want those to show up as or get committed to the repository across all the repos you work in, using your local Git config could be a nice way of doing that. So this stood out to me as an interesting project, display.dev, and only because it's something that we find ourselves doing. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know that we were going to sign up for display.dev. But what I like about it is it validated the use case for me and allowed me to explain. So these days, more and more, we are all conversing with our BFF, Claude or Codex, or choose your agent, and we have an artifact produced from that. And if you've tried to share that artifact with someone, like on Slack, and you realize that Slackdown is nothing like Markdown and is really hard to present. You also are pretty limited when you only get to share Markdown. And if you want to try and present your case in a more eloquent way, it'd be nice to be able to have like a paste bin for your agent to put its work so you can share it with your coworker on how to do something or what you're thinking. That is my understanding of what display.dev how display.dev works, and it includes an MCP as well. So this is a way for your agents to via an MCP to produce artifacts that you can then view and share in a clean way. So Does that sound interesting to anyone else? Curious? All right.
And does it also negotiate so it hosts the website behind company portal? Is that the idea? So it has your company internal Google Auth login as well?
I think you can restrict exactly. You can restrict access to assets that are pushed to display.dev,
Hmm.
so that they have to have an email from a certain domain, for example. And then
Hmm.
being able to push like an HTML asset to that. I don't believe this is not this is not like Vercel, right? This is not to
Mhm,
host
mhm.
the, but if you have a simple HTML markup, you can upload there probably.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was currently, of course, with all the agent stuff and such, more people in our company and our org are now wanting to make little websites and present it with other teams. And usually we're pretty hesitant on doing anything about that. Of
Yeah.
let's find a different way to maybe store it in Google Drive or something. The most that we've looked at is with GitHub pages. If you can use GitHub pages, not only does it benefit from we don't have to give any infrastructure or anything hosting wise, GitHub handles that for us, but also by default, if you're on the GitHub Enterprise thing, the website that you host on GitHub pages has to be accessed via GitHub Auth. So
Yeah.
only your company employees, your org employees can access it. Super nice little thing. There is no auth that you have to worry about with Google or anything. As long as you're logged in with your GitHub, you can access the site.
Yeah, I think that that is a happy path, and if what you want to do represent is satisfied by Google Pages, then that's
Yeah.
probably a pretty good thing. And if there's an MCP to access it, that's even better. I would say for me, having either an MCP, which I prefer these days actually, or
Mhm.
a CLI that's rich enough that it can manage the assets at that
Mhm.
location, that's good. What we do
True.
at Cloud Posse is um, we have our own like CMS publishing system, but it's all built in Next.js, so it's putty, right? We can do whatever we want with it. So like the slides that you see here, our proposals, our contracts, everything we do is just MDX, and that allows us to really rapidly put out content and things like that. So that's what I would like is more publishing through the Markdown or MDX, or being able to just have my agent push things to portals we can control. But what you bring up is a good, there's a nuance here. If it's just static, like websites and things like that published
Mhm.
in your org, that's one thing, easy to solve, either like something like what we're doing or Google Pages or whatnot. Where I think you'll be frustrated with Google Pages, or like where I get frustrated is it's hard sometimes to present information in a digestible way if you can't
Yeah.
create custom components for how to visually represent that information. That's why I like building up a design language almost in components that you can use every time you want to express certain kinds of information in consistent ways. Here's a design decision. Here's a task. Here's an action item. Here's a visualization of a graph, but it's not every time random or different ways. It's toolbox of displays, utilities.
Gotcha.
But
And tangentially related, just
yeah.
because you mentioned what we're looking at, this is MDX. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the office hours. This is our own slide system that we developed at Cloud
Neat.
Posse.
Gotcha.
Um,
This happened some point, yeah, because I remember for the longest time it used to be a bullet point on Google Slides, and then suddenly I thought, well,
exactly.
this is quite
I
nice.
was
We
I
can
was
put,
wasting 30 minutes every day updating slides when
yeah,
instead I could just be posting the links. So we already have at cloudposse.com uh, Slack archive. We already
Mhm.
ingest everything in our Slack archives,
Mhm.
and those are public. So this was easy enough just to reuse our MDX component for slides and ingest the data from a channel since we already have that data. So kind of like stacking the wins.
Very neat. Very neat.
Yeah. What was it? The last thing I was going to say, though, to your point, uh, Rashad, was on the sandboxes, this is where I think a pattern we're going to see more and more in mid-sized to enterprise companies is enabling more sandboxes, and not sandboxes in like just running untrusted code, but sandboxes that allow more people on the team to push out little web apps and things like that that are accessible only internally. Probably have some modicum of zero trust that's added to it in front of it. So, user, like you said, with the Google Auth example and Google Pages, that they have to at least have a corporate login to access it. But allowing more people to prototype or riff on things, because I think allowing that creativity is so valuable in an organization. And it shouldn't be just the developers who get to be creative.
True, and especially because it feels like, from what we've seen internally, finance departments, the folks who we would never expect, they
Yeah.
come up with some crazy impressive visualizations none
Yeah,
of our
yeah,
developers would have imagined.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it is a great equalizer,
Hmm,
uh,
hmm.
allowing them to and it allows them to be. It's I saw a great write-up, or I saw a great comment on a post on Hacker News. I can't refer to the exact situation, but the term that came out was jigs, which are what carpenters have, or right? These are molds, these are patterns, these are these things that you use in these situations. And
Hmm.
developers, we have those. We have our ways of doing some things, but now that's
Hmm.
even something that like your CPA can have her jigs for how she wants to present, the end of year tax return to her clients. Having done this now for 15 years, she knows exactly the questions that come up and how she wants to present it. So why not? She can just create her own, customer landing page to talk about their tax return back. And internally in finance, when they want to do their reports, I think they can start doing some of those same things. The key thing is enabling all the little things that make the last mile pretty easy. Some way to get the data, some way to do the visualization, some way to host it, some way to authenticate it, some way to, and then you stack those things together and you can create really cool little micro sites or sandboxes, like you said, to present.
Now you've really got me wondering, maybe we should look into display.dev more.
Yeah, or building your. I think this is where like companies might start, or at least tech forward companies, they would have their own internal display.dev kind of their
Right.
internal kind of here, just publish your assets here, and then they can control it. I think
Hmm.
what's so important about that also is now you start building this knowledge of other things, and like if you have a million, if you have a we've seen many companies that have 3,000, 4,000 microservices, and that's before AI. So what's going to happen, when you let the floodgates open? So having, yeah, some standardized way of staying on top of all those assets. Oh, I skipped this. This is kind of funny. This is something I must always be scanning for, and I've probably shared this multiple times on office hours without realizing that I already had shared it on office hours multiple times because it's been around for a while. But data sanitization, data normalization, when you are creating back like snapshots for QA and sandboxes, has always been a tricky thing, and that this is one of those things that Presidio helps with, I think. Have not personally tried it out, so if that says anything. Um, I thought this was a interesting detailed write-up by somebody who stumbled across a consistent proliferation of malware on GitHub, and apparently it gets this network, or this technique gets rediscovered by people all the time, and it's still happening to this day. And I thought it was a little surprising because I hold GitHub in high regard, and I know what a shit show it must be there trying to keep malware off the platform when it's gotten so easy with AI. Well, this is an interesting case where he discovered it this way, and I believe others have discovered the same way, that somebody creates a new GitHub team or a new GitHub user and creates a new repo, and that repo has the entire commit history of another project, but it's under the same name. And they do that presumably so that it looks like it's not a, flyby, so it looks like it's a mature project. Then they have automation that it's constantly committing to that repo and replacing the most recent commit. And then at some point, the most recent commit has a zip file attached to it, and that zip file has malware. And people have been complaining about this because, well, it's like impersonation, right? On the one hand, somebody's, basically stealing your repo, not just I don't believe these are forks. They're literally like stealing them, kind of like the commit history and everything, and purporting to be that other project, and then adding some malware to it. And he detected a pattern on how this works, kind of through investigation. Well, like the patterns that he saw. And he found that there were 10,000 repositories sitting around on GitHub that had this malware. And then there's been a constant stream of updates here of others pointing out they've also come across this same thing, and it's been going on for years now on GitHub. So the other interesting thing about it is, I think most, engineers who would be looking for this project or looking for this code would not be fooled by this. This is there for an attack against agents who don't have that same discerning eye. So the agents then might be decompressing the malware or doing something with that. So yeah, it's a dangerous world out there. Stay vigilant. All right. Next, so there are a few of these services now. We talked about runs on at the beginning of the show as a way or an alternative way of self-hosting your runners. I forgot what I was doing and what led me across namespace. So I thought I'd share it. It was the first time seeing it. Namespace is a little bit different than runs on. And like Blacksmith, I think, is the other alternative, and there's a few others. As a overall developer build platform, adding in aspects of more broad like artifact caching, specific integrations with what do you call it? Bazel, the build tool used by a lot of enterprises for C++ projects and so forth, and others. So I don't know. It's a lot more expensive than runs on. That's all I can say. Check out runs on. Has anybody seen namespace.so? Yeah, that was just new to me. All right, so everyone who had access to Fable, this is about 2 weeks ago. It was pretty neat. For me, my personal experience was it was just better at running longer before needing assistance. Um, I felt like overall the outcomes were about the same. It's just that it required a lot less prodding and interruptions to get the job done. But as we all know, that party was canceled by Friday of that week. I forget if that was June 12th or something. And now we've been waiting to have access restored. Well, it was shut down on grounds of export controls, and the US has this kind of trump card that they could pull anytime they want to restrict the technology. It's typically used for things like CPUs and technology like GPUs or encryption and things like that. Well, now it seems like AI might be getting that classification at a certain level where AI will have export controls. So the reason why Anthropic pulled it after receiving the takedown notice, well, the requirement that they restrict it to U.S. nationals, even domestically. They took it off because they didn't have obviously the controls to do that. Well, this is a foreshadowing of what's to come. They have partnered, Anthropic has partnered with Persona, which I believe is one of Peter Thiel's companies, to do identity verification. And in order to gain access to certain models, you're going to have authenticated with, authenticated yourself using a valid government ID. I mean, this is good for, uh, me as an American living in the US, but it's unfortunate for anyone who's outside of the US. That might mean that, yeah, Fable will not be available for the foreseeable future. I'm wondering how this will play out and if this is going to become another bargaining chip or something. If you want to get access to US models, you have to, have some bilateral trade agreement.
And I guess it also implies some kind of invisible barrier beyond which, if your LLM model is smart enough, suddenly you need to do this. But if it's dumber by even a certain percentage, it's fine to be used as is.
Yeah.
I was going to also say, I mean, from a security perspective, I would also challenge, if you're sharing your government issue ID, how do you know it's really secure? Where it's
Right.
really going and how it's being shared? And it just seems like it's like the way I see it, the way I feel it, and you folks may not agree. Definitely feels like there's some government control happening in the beginning of what I'm seeing here. So it's like are having a lot more say and power on how AI should be used. I'm not saying that there should not be a verification process. I think they should partner with a company like ID me to do this kind of stuff. I don't. I mean, I personally would not feel comfortable wanting to share.
Mm-hmm.
ID me has been around. The technology's been around for a while, and a lot of other government-related companies or companies that are defense contract use their technology. So,
Yeah. Is ID I've seen it before and I've used it obviously for I think irs.gov or other sites. Um, what is the story behind ID.me? Is it is it a for-profit, nonprofit, or government-run entity?
It's entirely commercial. It has a somewhat colored history from during the pandemic when
mhm.
unemployment, state-run unemployment insurance schemes, many of them collapsed from high demand, and IDMe was implicated in that because it was the gatekeeper for identity verification already for some states.
Okay, and that would coincide probably with the first time it stood out to me was during COVID. Yeah. Okay.
But I wanted to say, like, just quickly on this question of vetting people where they can use models too. Am I the only one who thinks that citizenship is a very strange, uh, very blunt kind of instrument that doesn't,
Yeah.
that's just strange. I just put that
If
out
you
there.
if you think about it, right? In an idealistic sense, there should be some nationalistic pride there, and you wouldn't want to inflict self-harm or whatever. But is that really a accurate proxy for intent? And no. Yeah. What should it be though? Yeah. Uh, but I agree. There's something weird here about like how this online ID verification. I'm really skeptical that that this is viable anymore, given the insanely good deepfakes that we've seen that job employers are falling for on a daily basis. You can't do the finger thing anymore, right? We're beyond that. This moving around or whatever that's not gonna trip up the AI anymore. So how are they actually? What are the digital artifacts that they're picking up on to uh, detect the kind of deep fake?
Well, and furthermore, you saw a case yesterday. Someone in the Cloud Posse Slack community flagged a job posting
Yeah.
as a a foreign
Oh,
proxy
right.
that
Yeah,
uses
exactly.
US
Just that.
citizens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that would pass muster because you have a
Exactly.
proxy in the
Without
US.
technology, you just have a
Yeah,
proxy human.
yeah. Or someone retyping at the keyboard or
Yeah,
camera or that's sort of an air-gapped setup like
yeah.
that. So it just seems like the wrong or an instrument that doesn't prove it doesn't
Yeah,
prove
it's a
somebody.
losing battle. It's a stopgap at best, but not a long-term solution.
I mean, and what's happening now as far as because there was actually somebody that tried to attempt to do a scam on me last week, and I caught it
Really?
early, and I reported them to their HR and I opened a report with the FTC.
Wow, wow.
Yeah,
What,
but I was
you
gonna
want to
say,
share? Is there anything you can share for others to be more vigilant or to, the telltale signs?
if you get on a video, well, first you have to see if they're with a third party. I did not know. What was suspicious about it is a few things that stood out to me. Is one is that the recruiter never shared their LinkedIn profile, which is always a first way, initial way for me, anyways. And then I do some additional searches to kind of vet it
Mhm.
out. Number one, number two, when I
So
got
this was a candidate you interviewed through a recruiter?
this is I was getting interviewed that I had set up an interview. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so then I got on the video call and they have a requirement for to be on video, which is fine. But the person who was interviewing me was not coming on video and it was very, very suspicious. And I had also told them on the email, because there was an email that sent out, I said, I do not wish to be recorded. And then they had a third party that kept coming on there and kept hitting the record button. I said, I've asked you like 3 times now that I don't want to be recorded. And I said, I have the right to not, as per Privacy Act that
Yeah.
I don't want to be recorded. That was the other thing that stood out to me. And lastly, finally, when the interviewee came on video, he said to me, he goes, I need you to show me your passport right now on video. And I said, absolutely not. And I said, I'm going to exit the call right now.
Yeah, I mean,
It's crazy. I
who's scamming who?
cannot believe it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I yeah, that's so, and I can only imagine how many might fall for something like this that aren't skeptical. So
exactly. And I shared it on LinkedIn and I had a few other people that responded and I told them they had a similar experience or in that arena, and I told all of them to report it to the FTC. So,
yeah, yeah. Oh, all right. And about that too, even in our Slack community, I like to think that small communities like these would be the last sanctuary from spam and scammers, but not. I mean, and the common thread, on the back end, they all have Gmail addresses or other free email. We blocked like any standard like disposable email domains and things like that. We still allow free email providers,
hmm.
but it's just too easy to get emails these days. So I'm wondering what we could do in our own community to make it a little bit more painful for blatant spammers or scammers to, just sign up. Any ideas, Shannon?
Do you use any kind of tooling now as far as like business email compromise or any of those kind of things at all in your environment?
No, we're not running like the checking the email against some other lists. Like,
Yeah.
are there? Okay, that's a good idea. Do you know? Do any free endpoints or resources off the top of your head that we could think about looking at?
I will think about that and I'll send it over to you
Yeah,
if there's anything that's free. I don't know if there's anything necessarily out there that's free, but there's, always stuff that's constantly
yeah.
running up.
It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to, yeah, and we have the database for the list. It'd be interesting to reconcile it with any of these lists to see if it would have caught or prevented any of these things. Shy of that, the only thing I can think of is kind of what you were alluding to is like we require our LinkedIn to join, right?
Hmm.
And who wants to go through the effort to scam a few people to create that LinkedIn profile?
Right. Yeah.
Eric, one thing to consider, and I don't know if this can be done easily with Slack. I mean, if not, this is a great opportunity for people to create some software with AI. It should be easy, but some online forums have a sort of social credit system. Of course, that can be manipulated, but I think of Mac Rumors, for example, that there are many forums there where you cannot post if you don't have much of a history. So you might protect
Yeah.
jobs or some of the or even office hours, or choose
Yeah.
which channels should be more open, which ones should be less open, relatively speaking, and then have people build up a history so that they're not doing the drive-by, which is, I mean, even
Yeah,
people who
yeah,
don't have
yeah, yeah.
nefarious intent will come in and just take advantage of the
Exactly.
community and ask a university question or something. So maybe that could discourage it if we make people build up, a few messages, a little interaction before they can do more.
Yeah. I mean, we're on a free Slack team, somewhat restricted on what we can do, but I guess some of this can just be cleanup. For example, if a person signs up, posts two links, doesn't, come back for 7 days, well, those links go bye-bye. And start curating better content, not from just self-promotion. But yeah, interesting ideas. All right. So I was surprised that it was over, what was it? It was 14 years ago that the new TLDs dropped. 1200 TLDs, like, dot. I was trying to think of one of the funny ones. I can't think of it right now, but sucks dot sucks or something. But now there is a call for new global TLDs. They will it You can apply now up through August, and roughly in October timeframe they're going to announce the initial list of TLDs they are considering. But there will be a lot of duplicate contention for popular global TLDs, and that'll be a separate process. Anyways, I'm looking forward to a fresh set of global TLEs, as everybody's bought up the good ones right now. This was an interesting one for me. Kind of like a, now I get it. Now I understand. So, these researchers discovered the extent of the problem of free apps on TVs also coming with a free proxy um, uh, as part of it. And if anybody has previously purchased proxy lists for, non-nefarious reasons, or like, scraping or things like that, you might wonder, where do they get all these proxies from? Well, all these TVs with these free apps installed that are actually acting as proxies that these proxy networks then sell. So it's a yeah, not good at all, because this is traffic that is basically impersonating on your IP address, your reputation, um, and the extent of it. They checked 6,000 apps on LG TVs, and 2,000 of them, uh, one third of them had these IPs on them, had these proxies running as part of the apps that get installed. And I have a lot of LG TVs. Good. I'm not installing any third party apps. I don't think I'm vulnerable, but yeah, anyone?
I really appreciate that you posted that. I'm not surprised. I think the vendor software already, because it's all Android, uh, already has enough spyware componentry in it. And since it's become impossible to buy dumb TVs anymore, they're all quote unquote smart. Mine are not on the network. And I get
Ooh.
error messages and annoyances and all, but I would never.
Mm,
I do firmware updates on USB sticks, and I use an Apple TV box where I want apps and that kind of connectivity. That I'm sure also, I mean, it would be better.
yeah.
It's a bit of a walled garden in the App Store, but there's still risk with that. But I also use hard power switches for these things, so that goes off. It doesn't need to be on.
Yeah.
I would suggest both of those to at least. I mean, the TV could buffer stuff too, but smart TVs should not be on the internet. Buy a box from a reputable manufacturer if you want that. And even then, like hard
Yeah.
power switch, it's not needed 24 hours a day.
Yeah. It is disconcerting, and I hope LG will respond to this problem and do something with their TVs to prevent this kind of thing. And it goes to show, I mean, as much as one can hate things like the Apple Store and their strict policies and crappy turnaround, this is what happens on a free market. You get proxies. All right, let's see here. So yeah, Paul, you shared this one. This is interesting. So AWS joins the sandbox movement, uh, enabling micro VMs through Lambdas to run untrusted code. Um, I did not get a chance to look too deeply into this yet. Paul, anything else you'd like to share here?
Yeah, I wanted to share just a little bit of intelligence that I've gathered so far from community builders and other places. In our community here in the Slack community in office hours, I put a thread and I have the pricing for this in terms normal people can understand because they price it per second and it actually goes to 8 decimal places, cents to 8 decimal places. So you can't make sense of that. So the basic reality is that the typical one of these is $1 for 8 hours, and it's billed per second. So
Okay.
in a nutshell, and so overall, it's a really neat capability. You've got as opposed to a normal container setup, you have a fully isolated kernel for each of these. So that's the advantage. And you have an image that is stored for at least a week and possibly longer if you want. And then you can suspend, resume. You can launch multiple ones. So
And
a
that's the
lot of
key thing, being able to suspend it, resume it. Yeah, and it preserves the memory when you suspend it.
Indeed, memory, and it starts also when an image is created. When you provide a Docker file and other files, you zip them up and send them to S3. It builds the image for you, and when it creates that image, it initializes it and snapshots the memory, so you don't have the same cold start penalty that
Oh,
you would expect. So even from the beginning, that's really well done. Of course, there's storage cost for that because you're storing a memory image.
yeah.
The vCPU to memory ratio is always it's fixed. It's 1 vCPU to 2 gigs of RAM. The smallest you can get is a quarter of vCPU and half a gigabyte of RAM, and the largest you can provision is 4 vCPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, and then it can scale. Whatever you provision can scale to 4 times that automatically, and you pay for what you've actually used per second. So it's a pretty good capability. The launch blog posted the link there. The requirements.txt file is not provided, and don't forget to include GUnicorn. This caused some frustration for people. And then make sure you provide a CloudWatch log group or provide permissions in the roles you define so that you'll see the container build logs in CloudWatch, because otherwise it's kind of a black box if it fails.
All right.
So that's all I know so far. But the pricing stuff, take a look at that thread there. I didn't put a link, just put it in a thread so you can make sense of the pricing for normal people.
Cool. So Surreal from Runzon developed a plugin that makes searching for actions, runs, and everything easier. I have not checked it out yet. Not not specifically a pain point for me, but looks interesting. There is so much opportunity for GitHub to improve, though, overall discoverability and organization of workflows and runs. So. And lastly, so a few weeks ago, Claude came out with I forget what they called it, like security harness for defense or something. I forget exactly, but the idea was showing teams how they can build a feedback loop to identify potential opportunities for security vulnerabilities, and research and then validate that those are actual exploitable vulnerabilities, and surfacing therefore actionable faults in your system. This seems to be something similar by OpenAI's research. And it builds on top of their 5.5 cyber model, which is one that you have to be vetted for to get access to. Anybody know more about that program and what it takes to get access to it? I'm curious. All right. So yeah, lots of updates happening in Atmos. These are kind of stacked, if you will, because what we are doing in Atmos is expanding what it can do. So understanding some of these things will also make a lot more sense with the demo. I got to do that coming up in maybe in a week or two. But what we've been helping customers with for the last 10 years is how to basically deploy deploy software. Um, Before you can start deploying software, right, you got to stand up your infrastructure. Before you can stand up your infrastructure, you need the Terraform, you need the processes, and you need to even know what you want to build. But then you need to start shipping it. So then you need to figure out how you're going to do your workflows. So you start working on that. And then you have different targets that you're deploying to ECS, you're deploying to Kubernetes, or you need to set up local development, or you need to authenticate, you need to install all these tools. So we've been doing this over and over for so long, and I feel like we understand the surface area pretty well at Cloud Posse. And what we're trying to do is build that into one declarative spec within Atmos. So it's so easy for us to work and deliver solutions because it's all in one tool, it's all in one declarative format with skills. And what you'll see now over the coming weeks are more and more features enabling that are stacking on top of each other. So one of the things that we did was add native support for running containers in Atmos. Last year we announced support for dev containers, which is a way to run interactive shells in a convenient way. So you can define the dev containers for a repository, and you can just run Atmos to enter those dev containers. This is nice if you don't want to use your IDE to run those dev containers, for example. But really, that was the underpinning of the technology or the capability that enabled Atmos to be container native. So now we use that to create a new type of component called container. So now you can define, for example, a local stack for how to bring up your product. Then you can define that same stack, not using containers, using Terraform components. So now you have a story for how this works locally, and you have a story for how this works on your cloud platform du jour, if you're using Azure, if you're using GCP, and so forth. But we took this a step further and we defined the concept of a composition. And a composition is a subset of a stack. And you can then define that composition for local usage, dev, staging, prod, so that that composition could say, for my app, local is going to be Docker. For dev, it's going to be ECS. And for QA and production, it's going to be Kubernetes. And the same format can be used to express all of that, and you can just change the component types to implement it. So components are the implementation. So you could use Terraform, and coming hopefully in the next release will be native Kubernetes support, native Helm support. So now we have a unified way of deploying pretty much everything that we've ever had to deploy for the last 10 years in one declarative spec that is consistent and fully tested. Plus, then this stacks on top of all the other stuff we're doing, like native CI support. And since we have native CI support in Atmos, what that means is you can run this locally. It's super easy. And you run it in CI. It's super easy because it's the same command in both places. It's not figure out what GitHub actions to use, wrap it in a bunch of shell scripts, and none of that. You just add the step. So yeah, we'll be doing some more demos on that coming up. The other thing we did was finish up the plan file implementation. So Atmos has the concept of storing your plan file, which is the binary artifact of kind of the playbook of what Terraform's going to do. And we built in support to Atmos to now attach that as an artifact to a commit. So in CI during the plan phase, for example, you can commit that, you can attach that artifact using the GitHub Artifacts API. And then during the apply phase, you can download that artifact and you have a couple options. You can apply that artifact, but that's brittle because microscopic changes in state can cause that to fail. Or what you can do is generate a new plan and compare it to the previous plan file and see if they're the same, effectively the same. And that's now natively supported in Atmos. You can control whether using whether applying from a plan file is required, whether that if that verification fails, if it should just warn, or if it should fail, hard fail, or continue. And we support the concept of different storage backends for those artifacts, with the initial one being GitHub. So storing the artifacts as GitHub artifacts. Here's a minor one, but it's pretty nice. Here's a pro tip that I've been using all the time with Cloud Code and Codex. I have a lot of agents working. I could be doing something else. When they wrap up, I have them say that they're done. And say is a command on Mac, and it can actually vocalize any instructions you say. The same things exist for Linux and Windows. So we created a type of step in Atmos for the same reason. So now what you can do is Atmos, when it's and coming out soon, we can add this as a hook. So basically, when a workflow is done, it can say, hey, workflow completed, or workflow failed. Or when you run a Terraform deployment, if you're doing that locally, for example, local dev, it can announce when it's done. And that's nice when sometimes, you might be bringing up a complete architecture with, 25 different component instances deployed, and you want to know when it's done so you can keep working. And say is a nice way of doing that. Any questions on using text to speech? All right. We finally did publish our media assets for Atmos. So if you're using Atmos, you can now decorate your repositories with that if you wish. There's a lot of, if you don't like those, there are a lot to choose from. Some that are more neutral than others. I honestly thought we had supported this, but it turned out we did not. You can now document your components in line, add a description. This is catnip for your agents. This is freeform. You can put as much context here as you want, and that just makes agents more adept at operating on your infrastructure. Some ideas that were even brought up by customers were, when you define your components in the descriptions, describing what this component works well with, or when to use it, and so forth. I love this one here. So everyone has seen Trivy and TFSec and these tools that generate serif. If you've heard of ReviewDog is a cool organization that created a GitHub action that takes that serif and helps translate in such a way that you get the annotations, that you see the line level comments in your pull request, like, hey, this line is wrong. We built that functionality natively into Atmos now. So we announced a few weeks ago or a month ago support for hooks. So Atmos natively supports Trivy, TFSec, Chekhov, etc. Those tools all produce serif. Now, Atmos native CI supports the annotations, so it can translate the serif to line level comments. So it's not just looking at the build logs, you're actually looking at the pull request and you see on the line specifically the feedback from the tool itself. And we also added support for results, a generic term here, but in this case, if you're running on GitHub, that means uploading those results to CodeQL or GitHub's advanced security. And related to the announcement on containers, now Atmos can run containers as well. So in your workflows, you can specify a container for the entire workflow, or you can specify a container to run for a specific step. Atmos can also build your containers, push your containers. It can even push those containers to multiple registries. For example, if you have a registry in dev, staging, and production, Atmos can now push that artifact to dev, staging, and production. So we're investing a lot in the step ecosystem because we're trying to make Atmos this tool that just makes deployments so easy, so declarative, so consistent, no matter what platform you're using. And that's the end of the announcements, I think, for today. And I know we're way over time. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. There was no time for Q&A, but we will be back next week at the same time, same place. I will try and get a demo on the books for all these new features. Juan, I know you asked me, like, could we just have a repo where we show all this? Absolutely working on it. There's something I didn't even get to I want to talk about. But all of this is building up to the point where what we're trying to do is create end-to-end testable, provable architectures. And coming next week, we'll be announcing emulators. And that's kind of like the icing on the cake, because now we can not only define all the architectures the way we have, but the emulators will let us prove it that they work, at least for local emulation. Anyways, more on that. I snuck that in there. If anybody here is using Cloud Posse's open source or Atmos or things that power your business, we are an open source company. We provide commercial support. That's how we operate. Check out our support options at cloudposse.com/support. We do publish office hours like today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Apple Music, etc. So however you listen to your podcast, you can get access to our office hours. If you're new to office hours and you haven't registered, go to cloudposse.com/office hours to subscribe, and you'll get a weekly invitation to our live call. You'll find today's recording at youtube.com/cloudposse and join our Slack community at cloudposse.com/Slack. Newsletters will hopefully be going out next week or later on this week. I gotta get it out before the end of the month. So sign up if you haven't already to get my thoughts on that. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. We'll be back next week.